Hi, thanks everyone. So I get to have the fun job of talking to you about digital. It's definitely the most exciting medium in media today. It's also the most challenging, and especially when it comes to monetization. But I think we're at the beginning of something extremely powerful. Today we see about 75 million smartphones in the country, but in the next 5 years, we anticipate that reaching 450 million. And that, as an opportunity, is an incredible thing to take advantage of. So we at Times Internet have been working on the digital space for about 15 years, branching into a number of different areas, everything from print, everything from news to music to video to local to commerce, really a pretty diversified bet. And today we're the largest digital media group in India, an Indian company on the digital space with 100 million visitors every month. In reality, digital is actually not that different from any other medium. There's only two ways to make money. You either make it from advertisers or you make it from consumers. It's pretty simple, just like a print business or a TV business. The reason digital is different and the reason that it's more complicated is that the ways in which you interact with the digital medium are so much more widespread than a print medium or a TV medium or a radio medium or any other. You interact with it for your mail, for your news, for your friends, for your conversations. And with the amount of times you open your phone every day or look at your computer, the way we think about it as a business becomes a very different type of opportunity and complexity. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time today talking about, in the digital space, how we look at these two revenue streams, advertising and a consumer-led revenue. So let's start with the advertiser-led model. What we've realized is that on digital, you have this huge gap of supply and demand. There is a demand from advertisers to spend more money on digital mediums, and that's great. But what we really see is that there's this exponential growth in ad inventory. Every new blog, every new site, every growth in traffic creates billions upon billions of ad impressions. And what happens is that with that huge supply-demand gap, it creates a lot of complexity for advertisers to break and create an impactful campaign. So one of the things we're working on at Times is to say, how do we make ads that are better? So this is an example of something that we're playing with right now with India Times, which is a new ad unit, if it runs. Maybe there's a new ad unit. Whoops. I'm supposed to be the digital guy. I'm supposed to get this stuff right. Well, anyway, so this is an example of a new ad unit that we're running, which refuses to run. Anyways, what we've been doing is saying, what if we removed our 300 by 250, those spots that sit on the right side of the screen all the time, and said, what if we made better units that were more impactful, that let advertisers convey emotion, convey something more powerful than just a small unit? That's one of the things we're trying to do. The other thing we're trying to do is make ad units that don't suck. So what does that mean? Pretty much anytime you see ads on the internet, you try to avoid them. So one of the things we're trying to do is say, how do we make ad units that don't seem so terrible, that are actually good for the consumer, good for the advertiser, and good for the publisher? So this is an example of one that we did with Lufthansa, where they promoted a video that they spent a lot of energy working on. It was relevant and interesting for consumers, and it was clearly demarcated as something powered by Lufthansa. At the same time, the other major trend we see with digital advertising is that there is an increasing demand from advertisers for smarter and more targeted solutions. They want more precision, more accuracy, and more intelligence behind it. So for the last couple of years, we have invested incredibly aggressively into our ad tech platform, which helps us get a better understanding of our users and of what our advertisers are getting. So we can now generate reports like these, which help advertisers understand where did their inventory go, where did their ads run, how did they perform, which ads performed better, which ones performed worse. We can actually get to the point now where we can tell advertisers consumers in Bombay had a 70% higher click-through rate than consumers in other cities. That may be some relevant insight. And we've even gotten to the point now where we can say consumers who have been interested in the auto category have had a better click-through rate or a better interaction experience with your advertising than other consumers. Because we've done a lot of work to understand our users across every one of our platforms and develop that into an anonymous profile that helps our advertisers make better decisions. Now, all of this data is cool and interesting, and these are pretty graphs and all that. But at the end of the day, a CMO needs to understand what is the impact that they're making. And data and charts and graphs are fine, but how do I refine that into something that's useful for me as a marketer? If you ask me, the single thing that will make a meaningful impact on whether digital advertising matters is if it can do three things. If it can deliver reach, but also if it can deliver simple and impactful results. Now, simplicity is really important, especially when you deal with a medium that can be really, really complex. So again, one of the things we really work on is after an advertiser places a campaign, we want them to get analysis and an understanding of what that campaign taught us. So did you know that a certain percentage of the people who interacted with your ad were women? Or they were from a certain city? Or did you know that this creative worked better than that creative in terms of its responsiveness? Our view is that if we can make advertising smarter, then there's a meaningful case for digital advertising to have an impact. The second part, which I wanted to talk about, was about getting consumers to pay. Right? So there's two revenue streams. You can make it from an advertiser or from a consumer. Now, pretty much every day on the front page of the paper, you read about a new e-commerce company or a travel commerce company raising a ton of money and growing its transaction base and whatnot. And that's all great. But today, most of the money that you see being spent online is actually money that's being shifted from being spent offline to being spent online. So I used to go to a store to recharge my phone. Now I can do it online. I used to go to a store to buy something. Now I can buy it online. I used to call a cab or go find a taxi on the road. Now I can call one from my phone. At the end of the day, all of these spends are high utility value spends, but they're not necessarily growing the spend pool. They're just shifting it from one place to another. I'm still going to buy a phone. The difference is I didn't buy it in a store. I bought it on a website. What really interests us and really gets us curious is whether we can get consumers to start paying for things that are new and that are different from what we may have not spent for otherwise. Now, specifically when it comes to media, there have been a few examples globally where on digital, consumers have been willing to pay. Netflix is probably the most prominent example, with 30 million people in the US alone paying to watch on a monthly basis to watch a huge, vast library of video content. Spotify is doing the same thing for music in many other countries. We've been very invested in this idea and seeing if we could make it work. And so we've invested fairly aggressively into two of our platforms, Ghana and Box TV. In the case of Ghana, we've seen dramatic user uptake, probably our fastest growing digital property today in terms of new users every week. The question that we get asked every time we say this, though, is, yeah, sure, people are listening to music, but are they paying for it? And will they pay for it? And I think that's the challenge that's really in front of us. The only response I'll give, though, and it still remains to be seen whether we can make it happen or not, is that if I told you that there was an example within India in the last few years where over 100 million people in India were paying on a monthly basis for music, you would probably not believe me. But the truth is that exists even today. It just exists in a form that we don't really think about, which is caller ringback tones. People pay so that you can hear a song when you call me. So I think we still have a lot to prove. We still have to say whether we can actually create a revenue stream out of digital, with consumers actually paying us. But I do think there are precedents that say if we deliver great value, if we make a really compelling proposition to users, we might actually make it work. Now, the one major hurdle that's stopping us is payments. Now, the reason payments are such an issue is that these are leisure products. These are not utility products. This isn't the plane ticket that you need or the train ticket that you need to get from point A to point B. These are lifestyle products. And so when we add extra impediments in the way and make it really difficult to sign up for them, it has a huge impact on our ability to convert users. In the rest of the world outside of India, payments have evolved with technology. In most countries, you can do what's called recurring billing, which is inform the user up front that you're signing up for a service that will charge you each month, with always having an option to cancel and always being explicit in the communication. That's not allowed in India. And just a few days ago, we all saw Apple make some major announcements with Apple Pay, where you can actually tap your phone to make a payment. When I was watching the live blog of the address, the Apple address, the comment I saw most popular on Twitter was people saying, if this happened in India, I would tap my phone, and then I would get an SMS, which I'd have to reply to, and then I'd have to dial the number and fill in some information, and then they would let me charge the consumer. So I think the challenge is, if we really want to see a digital economy evolve and grow, we need a policy that will evolve with technology. It should be secure, it should be clear, it should be fair to the consumer, but it should also enable the consumer to do something more. So, digital has two models: ads, consumer money. But before I finish, I actually think there's one more model, and I think this other model is actually more exciting than these two. That's innovation-led models. Now, this is a stupidly generic term, and I don't like using these types of things, but what do I mean by this? Everything we've talked about thus far is something that exists in traditional media that has moved online. So we talked about video, like television, moving to online. We talked about music moving to online. We talked about news moving to online. But there's a huge slew of non-traditional media companies that have developed in the last 5 years that we've never seen before. I love this example, and I just have to explain it. How many people in the audience here have heard of a company called Twitch? So there's like 15, 16 hands amidst like 150. And if I asked you if you heard about it 3 months ago, there would be like 3 hands, okay? The reason these 16 people heard about it was that it was just acquired by Amazon for over $1 billion. That's why it showed up in the news. But if I told you a few years ago, I've got this killer idea. I'm going to start a website where I can play a video game, and I can let my friends watch me playing a video game, you would say I'm an idiot, because there's no freaking way that people want to watch other people playing video games. You play video games, that's why you do it. But if I told you that at times Twitch is more than 10% of all video traffic in America, and that at any given point, if you were to log on to twitch.com, you would see millions of people watching a single person playing a video game. And you would actually see people paying that user in support of him to have him continue playing a video game. You would say I'm insane, and yet that exists today. So what's the point? The point I'm trying to make is that we think of media as the things we've understood for 50 and 100 years, converting them online. But there's this huge opportunity in media that we don't even know yet today that may develop in something that we've never seen before. And the cool thing is that while a lot of these models have traditionally been based out of the US, we're actually seeing a lot of that innovation now happening in India. For instance, all of these companies that I showed here, today I can show you an existing comparable company that's based out of India for Indian consumers. And that's something that I couldn't have said 5 years ago. If you ask me, these new media models that will be different from things that existed in the traditional world will be 10 times the value of regular traditional businesses. And so if we say one of our goals is to create this $100 billion M&E industry, we as an industry should be supporting the new innovative digital media as it develops. Now, this is my one point, which I think is the key thing to make that happen. The reason so many cool, innovative, amazing things show up on internet is that it is the ultimate meritocracy. There can be 3 guys sitting in a garage or a 10,000 person internet company with lots and lots of money behind it, and it's a fair fight between everybody because the internet treats everybody equally. Increasingly, that claim is under threat, and it's under threat because the people who control the pipes, which are usually telecom operators, have an opportunity, if not controlled properly, to take advantage of their position to make the internet an unequal playing field. And I think if one of our major goals is to say, let's build an incredibly vibrant digital media ecosystem where India stands on the map as something globally respected, we should be doing a part to make sure that everybody has a fair chance at the internet. And to do that, we really need a neutral internet. So that's it. I'm done. I think this hopefully gives you a little bit of an understanding of how we look at the digital world. The only thing I'll say is get ready, because what we've seen in the last 5 years will pale in comparison to what we see in the next 5 years. So we're seeing it happen today in e-commerce and 1 or 2 other industries. But everything we are seeing from a consumption metric, from a reality of users metric, it's changing in a really big way today. Thanks.